Welcome to the second video in 3D content creation for Replicate. In this video, we'll be going over some of the object classes within 3D Studio Max that you can carry over to the Replicate equipment previewer. Now, this video series assumes that you're already familiar with some basic concepts within 3D Studio Max, such as modeling, texturing, and animating. While we'll be going on into some of the technical hurdles that you'll be facing when creating your content, we won't be teaching you things like modeling practices and UV unwrapping or things that you should find elsewhere. I do want to point you into some specific attributes and properties that you might want to be paying attention to as you create your content. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's go ahead and open up 3D Studio Max here. I've already got the LAMP file loaded. Now, when you first start creating content for use in Replicate, we'll probably head over to the Create panel, where you can see the different classes that you can create. And most likely you'll start building one of the models of some of the assets in your scene. So we'll start using some of the primitives to build up basic copy of our lamp here. All right, and of course, being familiar with 3D Studio Max modeling, you'll know that you must convert these objects to, say, an editable mesh or an editable poly in order to make more specific alterations to them. Let's go ahead and do something like that. So most artists will note that utilizing editable poly to make the alterations are significantly easier than utilizing, let's say, editable mesh. However, it's important to note that the output of 3D Studio Max to Replicate will most likely resemble the editable mesh visuals. We don't have anything super complex in this scene, but once you start making complex objects, there can sometimes be polygon burns or smoothing group errors that won't appear when working with editable polygon. So one of the things that we tend to do to ensure that we have the best possible outcome within Replicate is once we're finished altering some of the objects, we'll go ahead and put an editable mesh on top just to ensure that there's no errors with the smoothing groups or anything of that matter that make their way over. So our second class of object here is the shape class object, splines as they're also called. Now, if you haven't utilized splines before, they can be incredibly useful when creating complex mechanical parts. So I recommend that you check out some videos in spline modeling if you're not already familiar with it. Of course, one of the most common uses for splines is creating pipes or cables. So let's go ahead and demo that basic use for it. All right, we've got a cable here. We can adjust the thickness. We can adjust the fidelity of it in real time. But one of the most useful features is using the generate mapping coordinates in the real world map scale here. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. I'll make another cable that's a little bit longer, and it's got the same properties applied to it. And I've prepared a material here for cables. And name that cable. We'll go into a little bit more detail on how to create something like this for one of the future videos. But we'll go ahead and apply this. And you can see using real world map scale, we've got the same amount of patterning within this cable as we do here. This one just has more, and that is due to the use of the real world map size checkbox. The main thing to note, though, with spline creation is splines aren't supported in Replicate, but the use of them to create geometry assets is perfectly acceptable. And the only thing that that you need to remember is to place an editable mesh object or editable mesh modifier on top of the spline, and you'll get exactly what you see in 3D Studio Max, just as a geometry asset within Replicate. Using the editable mesh modifier also allows you to continue making edits to the spline's shape, even after you've cemented it as a geometry asset. And you'll see, even expanding the length, you'll notice the amount of patterning growing on there. And that is, again, due to the real world map size check. Now, the next class of objects are max lights. These are not supported in Replicate, but there are a few lighting rigs available to choose from within Replicate. You'll want to watch the video series for the Replicate editor to get a better idea of the lighting solutions provided. But of course, if you do want to utilize max lighting, it just needs to be baked into your diffuse map channel, which we'll go into in the video on texture baking. The next class of objects, max cameras, are also not supported, but you will be creating eye points and navigation presets within the Replicate environment to maneuver around your equipment file. So you'll be able to see more of that in the video series linked below for the Replicate editor. The fifth class of objects are the helper class objects, such as dummy objects that are used in rigging a lot. These are also not able to be transferred over to the Replicate engine. However, one exception is the max group functionality. And I want to show you that. Probably the easiest way to show you is with the schematic view here. So we'll see that we've got the dummy that we've just created, and it's green, which signifies that it's a helper class object. And we've got our splines, which are shape class objects, and we've got the cylinders and cones here that we used to model here as purple, signifying that they are geometry class objects. So I want to note when using Max's group functionality that what actually happens is we're creating new group. We're actually creating a dummy class object that contains this, and it's got some special functions where you can open and close the group and make alterations to elements within the group. And you can see the bounding box here, which is the actual group, new group. So I wanted to show you one other thing, and we'll have to build a hierarchy here. So call this lamp base. lamp shade. And we'll go ahead and link these to the lamp base here. And we've got our group, which contains our two splines, one with an editable mesh modifier and one without. So let's go ahead and export this, and we'll call it lamp groups. And it's successful. Let's open the replicate equipment previewer real quick and open up the file that we just exported. And you'll notice here that the spline has not come in as an object. Look in here, you've got your spline here with the edit mesh modifier and the one without. And then we've got the lamp base. So a replicate group, one difference here is you'll notice that we've got lamp base, but there's a third piece here called the lamp base mesh. So a replicate group, what happens is the parent object in a max hierarchy chain, its mesh data is duplicated and becomes a child of the group, which is similar to Max's dummy type object. This object has no geometry in it, but it does hold the three elements of that previous geometry. All right, so hopefully that gives you some idea of some of the objects that you can use within 3D Studio Max that will transfer over to Replicate. Now, any further questions about object classes can be directed to support@disty.com. Now, our next video will be going into some of the material properties that you'll also be able to use. So, hope to see you there.